Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Cynthia, and today we're going to be making a little Christmas folder. So these folders I've actually sent out already, and some of them have already started arriving. They're little ephemera folders that I wanted to make for some of my friends in the journaling community, and I thought I would make one as one of my Dust to Roses design team projects. So for this particular folder, I'm going to be using only her digital prints. Here I'm just showing you some of the folders I've already made. At this point, they were all kind of in process. I wasn't done with any of them. I was still adding some ephemera in there and closures and just little last minute touches. But just to give you an idea of kind of what we're working towards, they're all a little bit different. Each of them, of course, is for a different person, so I kept in mind each person's styles and what they may like. So I'm just showing you here some of the different ideas that I've came up with so far. And I've used already some of Cassie's digital prints, but also a few other ones for these ones. But in the one we're making today, I will be only using hers. And I thought this was a really fun project for me to do. It was something quite different from what I'm used to, and I've never done anything in like a bigger production, I guess, because I made quite a few of them, but it was a lot of fun. So I'm just starting off with a file folder that I've cut down, and the main image I want to use is this printable of the first roses of the summer. I believe that's a music sheet to cover, and I just love the colors, of course, the green and the red, which is very Christmas-like, and I removed the words first rose of the summer because of course it's not summer here and I wanted it to be a little bit more winter themed, as most of us are experiencing winter season, although many of us aren't seeing snow, but I will be, unfortunately. Well, I don't mind the snow, but it's a love and hate relationship between snow and I. So here, to glue the piece of paper down to the cardstock, I am just using a mixture of wet glue and my glue stick. I have tried this with a few different glue sticks and it doesn't always work, but this particular glue stick is not very sticky, so the wet glue really helps it. And I'm just placing the print kind of in the middle so that the rose is in the middle of the front cover. And then I'm pressing everything down with my little tool here to make sure that I'm trying to avoid as best as I can any bubbles from creating, and just trying to make sure that everything is just laying as flat as possible. And I'm just going to be applying some glue on the leftover of that printable and just flapping it over to the inside of the folder. And I'm using just a piece of a page from a book that I've gutted to help me put glue everywhere. With these folders, I really wanted to make sure that my friends would get them early enough to be able to enjoy them and create some of their own Christmas ephemera and just Christmas creations. So that's why I started so early. At the time that I'm recording this, it is mid-October already, and time just flies, and with the mail I know it's going to be taking a little bit longer than usual, so I didn't want to take any risks. So here I'm just making sure that that's folded properly and laying flat, and I'm just trying to get rid of any glue residue or anything like that. The wet glue that I use tends to whenever I get some anywhere else, it just does these little glue balls. So I'm just removing any of that from the project. And now I'm just making sure that I can fold the folder properly and doing that very carefully so that the printable that I've just covered it with won't rip. And my next step is going to be to pick out some other printables to cover the inside and the back section of the folder. I am just debating between a few of these vintage papers. This is one of my favorite kits from Dust to Roses. It has just a wide variety of different vintage paper. She has a few different packs with those kinds of papers in there, and I really love using them for any sort of projects. Often I use them in my collages, and I also include them when I create my journals. I find that those pages are really good pages in a journal. So I like to throw them in the mix because I'm not afraid to cover them with other patterns. Whereas whenever I put really pretty papers in my journals, and by that I mean like papers that have very busy illustrations or really pretty illustrations, I tend to not want to cover them because I find them too pretty. So that's a problem that I experience, and using these type of ledger papers or vintage receipt prints really helps me with that and allows me to still be creative while keeping that vintage look and simply not being afraid of covering it a little bit if I want to. So again, I'm just gluing everything down the same way using partly the wet glue and my glue stick. And I'm just pressing everything down with my little tool to make sure that it's adhered onto the cardstock properly. And then I'll be folding the folder again as well, just to make sure that everything is laying flat even as I'm folding it. But I still have that back part to cover, and I will be doing that with a different printable. Before adding the back part for the printable, I'm just going to cut off the excess so that I know where to cut the next printable I'm going to be gluing down. I have been in full Christmas mode. I like Halloween, but with this year, we didn't end up decorating. And we usually really like to do something for Halloween, but I don't think this year is going to happen. So I've just been focusing on Christmas, and that's working for me. I've been creating putz houses, and I don't know if you guys know what this is, but a putz house is actually it's a little house made out of, I make them out of cardboard, and then I paint them and decorate them, and essentially it becomes a Christmas village. And it's time consuming, but it's so much fun, and I enjoy it so much. So let me know if you guys would be interested in seeing my process on how I create that, because I'd be more than happy to share the creation of one house with you guys. But have you guys been starting your Christmas decorations or preparations, I guess? Perhaps not putting decorations. We don't have our tree or anything up, but I'm just working on the back end, I guess. I'd love to know if other people are also excited and trying to get into the spirits, even regardless of everything that's happening. I'm just cutting the excess now and making sure that there's no just extra prints. And my next step is going to be to start working a little bit on the cover before I work on the inside. I was super lucky, and my mother-in-law gave me a huge bag filled with Christmas cards that they have been receiving over the years. And it really sparked my creativity to create some ephemera with these cards, and I have a video that's going to be coming out after this one with some of how I've created some of the ephemera using these cards. But here you see me, I use the front of a card, and I just remove the illustration to add it onto the cover of my own folder here. And on that illustration, what I loved the most was, of course, the greenery, and I really love the bow. To me, red bows are very Christmas-like, so I didn't want to cover that. I do really love the rose, but I didn't mind covering a little bit of the rose, but I did really want to keep that bow at the bottom. So I'm just playing around with different elements, trying to figure out where I'm going to place each illustration and the little piece of the sheet of music, and just trying to make it look in a manner that looks good to me. I felt like the bottom with all the writing seemed a little bit busy, so I wanted to use something to make it a little bit less busy, and I settled for this is, I believe, another one of those vintage papers, printables from Dust to Roses. So I'm just trimming it, and I'm gonna make it a little bit less squared, I guess. And just ripping the edges to make it look the way that I want it to. So now I'm just gonna move on to gluing everything down. I was debating whether I wanted to ink up everything, but I decided not to. I did find that the imagery was already quite busy, and I just felt like I didn't need to grunge it up more. So I'm just applying glue on each of the back of these pieces, and then I'm placing them where I had been planning to. Here with this image, I felt like it was still covering a little bit too much of the digital print under, because I really love the rose and the greenery, so I didn't want it to be so hidden by it. So I decided to just rip off the edges a little bit more all around the image to make sure that it gave me a little bit more of the image under showing. My mother-in-law also gave me a ton of old ribbons, so I'm just going to be using this one here, just a piece of it, to add to the spine of the folder. I thought I'd just add a little element, and obviously it's very thematic, but I really like the hint of gold that it added and just a little bit of sparkle. And to secure that onto the folder, I'm just using some wet glue, and I'm spreading it with my finger to make sure that it doesn't seep through the fabric too much. The ribbon has a little bit of wires in it to keep it in its shape, so it is a little bit tougher to glue it down, but after holding it for a while, it did stay in place, thankfully. So I let that dry before working on the folder open, but this is where we're at right now. And now I'm ready to work on the inside. I just want to create some pockets to be able to hold a little bit of ephemera in there. And for one of the folders that I've made already, I created these two little doors that open up, and I wanted to do that again. And I'm just trying to find a printable that I would like to use for that. I also played around with the music sheet, but I needed something that would go with the colors that I have going on right now. And I actually settled for this other printable that I'm about to pick up here. And yeah, this one here. I just really loved it. I think this one is a French letter, possibly. It's one of the vintage types of papers from Dust to Roses. I'll make sure that I have the kits that I use in this video linked down below so that you know exactly where I got them. But I love these papers so much, and she just came out with a bunch more. So at the time that I was creating these, they weren't out yet, but she has some new digital kits for vintage receipts, and I just love them so much. They're absolutely my favorite kind of printables. That and wallpapers are just so much fun to be had with those. And now here I'm just trimming those pieces to make them a little bit shorter, because I don't need the doors to that section to be so long. here I'm just getting ready some washi tape to secure the two pieces to make the doors, but I soon realized that I only printed them like a one side, so I do want them to have something on the inside. I don't want it to just be white, so I just used some of the rose paper, and I'm just gonna glue down the two pieces of papers onto it so that when they're open you still have an interesting pattern. So you just want an interesting pattern when you open it, of course. I mean, I just thought that if it was just white, it was not boring, but I mean, a little bit. So here I'm just applying some glue, and then I'm going to be using the other piece to make sure that I'm leaving enough room for the other one. I did that a little bit silly. I guess I could have just used the other corner, and I don't know, I wasn't thinking, but it happens. Now that I'm done with that, I'm just gonna create a little hole. I wanted to make sure that it would be at the same height on each one of the doors, and I'll be putting a string through to be able to close together the two doors. I'm also adding just a little bit of a brown pen around the holes that I've punched through, just to make sure that they stand out a little bit more and they're not just white. And so I'm just grabbing a couple pieces of strings, and I'm just gonna put those through. Very simple and easy way to do that. And then I'll be grabbing a whiter washi tape to secure those doors onto the folder. I'm using a white washi, and I'm just gonna essentially be cutting it 4 times lengthwise. This way I'm able to use just the one piece of washi and it's not as big, but I really like that it was red, and of course red being quite a staple color for Christmas, and it just kind of went with the other elements that I had going on at the time. So you'll see me do that in just a moment. And here I just pressed down the washi tape to make sure that it was secured on there properly, and I'm just going to use the remaining of the washi to put it inside of the fold, just to make sure that it's on there properly and it looks a little bit more put together. Now I'm ready to move on to the next part, which is going to be the right side there. And I want to add some pockets that I can slide some ephemera into. And I'm going to be using some vellum to create those pockets. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do that. And I'm just going to trim down that piece into two. So I have a larger pocket at the bottom, and then I'll have the smaller pocket at the top. And to secure those onto the folder, I'm going to be using some double-sided tape as well as some washi tape. So first I'm going to be creating the pockets with the double-sided tapes, and then I'll add some washi tape at the bottom to just to make sure that it's not going anywhere. And the washi tape that I'll be using is actually a Christmas washi, so I thought it was quite fitting for that. Now that I have these two pockets, I'm ready to add a pocket at the bottom inside the door folds. And I'm just going to be using the leftovers from the paper that I used for the front, because it was the perfect size. So this is a great way to use your paper scraps as well to create these little pockets in the folders. And I'm just inking that up a little bit to make it stand out a little bit more against that other printable. Again, I'm just using the double-sided tape as well as some washi tape to secure that down. For this one, I will be using that same red washi tape that I used on the sides of the doors, just so that it's cohesive. now that my pockets are finished, I have kind of the results here, but I need something to close the folder. So I'm going to be adding an eyelet. Now with this particular folder, I probably should have thought about it before putting my doors in, and thankfully I left myself just enough room to add an eyelet. But if you create anything like this, just keep it in mind that you need some sort of hole somewhere to close it. I mean, you could just wrap a string around, but that was a little bit of a forgetful moment for me. So I'm just using my crocodile to put the eyelet on, and then I'll be able to move onto the really fun part, and it's to add some ephemera in here. Now I won't show you the whole process because I started adding ephemera, and then I had to go through like all my stash and kind of pick out some other items. And you know, this is just a preliminary adding, but you'll see the end results. And I'm just playing around. I want to add some of those vintage cards that I got, but I also have some other Christmas related ephemera. This particular folder went to a pen pal of mine, so I knew that I would be sending her a ton more stuff in the coming months, and we're very thankful to be living in the same province, so the mail actually gets really quickly to each other. She sent me something and sometimes I get it the next day, so I'm not too worried in terms of that. And I'm just trying to pick out some items that I think that she could use in her journaling and that she would appreciate, of course. So just trying to go through the different types of ephemera bits and pieces that I can add in here. And because she is in Canada as well, I know that she's experiencing a white winter, and therefore I'm adding some very snow related ephemera because I know she'll be able to relate to that. And here I'm just moving over that last piece of ephemera to be able to insert the letter into that folder instead. And that's it for this video, you guys. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Please leave me a thumbs up if you did, or leave me a comment down below. I have more coming, and I wish you all a really wonderful day, and I'll talk to you in my next one. Thank you so much.